What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly updates. There's lots of exciting news to go over here this week, but before I get into the news, I first want to mention I'll be doing my usual weekly live stream, but this time it'll be on Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, just so that I avoid the Super Bowl on Sunday. So Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, hope you all can join me. It's always a fun time hanging out and talking cars with all of you. But getting into the car news here this week, first, Subaru has finally revealed the hybrid version of the Forester. After revealing it back at the 2023 LA Auto Show, we finally have the 2025 Forester Hybrid here. And like you might have guessed, it uses the same powertrain we just saw debut a couple weeks ago in the 2026 Crosstrek Hybrid. And even though the Forester is debuting second here, it'll be the first to arrive, coming this spring versus the fall for the Crosstrek. As for that powertrain, for those that missed the Crosstrek news, it continues to use a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated boxer 4-cylinder engine, a CVT transmission, and retains its mechanical all-wheel drive system, which is a pretty big deal. And the engine is a bit different in its setup for hybrid duty, making a lower 162 horsepower, about 18 horsepower less than usual, but combined with the electric parallel hybrid system, it does a total output of 194 horsepower and borrows the hybrid components from Toyota. 194 horsepower does make it the most powerful Forester since the cool XTs that sadly haven't been offered for many years now. The biggest improvement, though, of course, is fuel economy, with increases of 40% in the city and 25% on the highway even, for ratings now of 35 mpg city, 34 mpg highway, and 35 combined. Range is also an impressive 581 miles. And that fuel economy is still significantly lower, though, than the other hybrid competitors. And that's kind of the cost of the less efficient boxer engine, the mechanical all-wheel drive system, all those things really drain that, efficiency there. But for people that must have one or both of those things, this is still a really great improvement in fuel economy. It adds about 300 pounds to the Forester and continues to do a strong 8.7 inches of ground clearance, so there's no compromises there. The other two differences are that it gets the 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster, just like the 2026 Crosstrek and the WRX TS, and it gets an exclusive color called Daybreak Blue Pearl. You can get the hybrid on every trim except the base model, and pricing for the premium hybrid starts at $36,415, including destination, and goes up to $43,115 for the touring hybrid. So, really great, though, that we finally are starting to see some hybrid options here from Subaru with the Crosstrek, with the Forester, and, chances are we'll probably see that for Outback, I'm guessing, as well, because it seems like this is now something they are really, pushing through the lineup, thankfully. So, great to see that. That's not all the Forester news, though. Subaru has revealed the 2026 Forester Wilderness at the Chicago Auto Show here this week. So it copy and paste the exact same formula and components from the last Wilderness, like all the same components. So if you already know everything about the current Wilderness, then you know everything already about this. It's just on the new Forester, but all the same stuff. So I'll save you some time if you're already familiar. But for those that aren't already familiar, let's go over briefly what you get here. So the main thing here is, of course, you see on the outside, there's the rugged styling, the tow hooks, and the skid plates. That all, jumps out at you right away. There's 17-inch wheels that are unique on Yokohama Geolandar all-terrain tires, and a roof rack that can hold 800 pounds. So a nice improvement there. Mechanically, it gets new springs and shocks that bump ground clearance to a solid 9.3 inches, which is really a lot for this segment. And there's a shorter final drive ratio for better acceleration, a transmission cooler that enables a higher tow rating of 3,500 pounds, and unfortunately, though, it makes do with the regular 2.5-liter Boxer 4 that still does just 180 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque. And sadly, that new hybrid powertrain that they're offering for 2025 isn't available here. You also get the dual mode X mode system that adds in a deep snow and mud setting in case you need the help. Inside, there's Wilderness logos and copper accents, but it's otherwise the same, although it does get the digital gauge cluster that Subaru just rolled out for the hybrid version of the Forester, the Crosstrek, and also the WRX TS. And so it's going to be arriving this fall as a 2026 model, but there's no pricing for those yet, but I'd assume it'll probably, stick pretty closely to the current Wilderness, since, again, there is really no new content. It's just on that new Forester. So, but anyway, nice to see they're continuing the Wilderness. It's obviously a very popular model for them. It makes a lot of sense to obviously get it on the new Forester here as fast as possible. And just a little over a week after the reviews of the Jeep Wagoneer S just came out on the launch edition, which is really a 2024 technically, which was kind of odd. But we now at the Chicago Auto Show got all the info from Jeep on the 2025 Wagoneer S, which unfortunately they weren't able to tell us 2 weeks ago on the drive program. We had to wait until Chicago, and now we have that info here. And so the main news here is they've added a lower trim kind of called the Limited. But basically it drops you from 600 horsepower to 500 horsepower, and from 617 pound-feet of torque to 524 pound-feet of torque, although you can still unlock that extra 100 horsepower through a software update later this year if you want. They didn't say how much that software update is going to cost, but it's going to be, behind a paywall, of course. And even without the extra power, though, it'll still do 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. Strangely, though, it somehow loses 9 miles of range with less power, now doing 294 miles of range. And this is also confusing because it goes down to 20-inch wheels for the Limited, which also should help range. So something's not adding up here. I'm not sure why we end up with worse range, but anyway, on the inside it makes the Macintosh stereo in the front passenger screen optional, that were standard there on that launch edition, but otherwise it's just as fully loaded as that launch edition. And for this reason, there's not much of a discount either, only knocking $5,000 off the price of the launch edition. Now it's $67,000 including destination, and with the stereo and the passenger screen likely being expensive options, there's likely not much of a discount at all to not go for the launch edition, which is confusing. But I'm assuming that the launch edition is probably only for 2024, and the Limited will basically take the place in the lineup as the only trim for now, for the 2025s here. And so I guess it's kind of replacing the launch edition, and so that's why there's really not much of a discount there. But hopefully they do actually add some real decontented trims soon, to actually get the price a little lower and get this to a more competitive place. I think it is competitive already considering the power and the performance. I talked about that in my review. But, it'd be nice to see some lower trims of this, again, for people who don't need all the bells and whistles still. And we'll see. But 2025, they also say is going to be adding a Hydro Blue color and an Arctic Gray interior color. So nice to see those additions as well. And, I guess, there was last year, they even already teased a Trailhawk version of this. So I think that's probably what will be coming next from the trim lineup. But we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, interesting to see that. And there's some new drama here, supposedly, in the Honda and Nissan merger talks that we just got some new developments on this week here. So, Reuters and other outlets claim that the merger has been called off completely, with Nissan's CEO reportedly already informing Honda's CEO that they're ending negotiations. And supposedly we'll get official word from Nissan about this next week, if this is in fact true. The reports say the same reason, or the reason why things went south, is that Honda wanted to completely buy out Nissan and make them a subsidiary of Honda. And that Nissan's board did not want that whatsoever, and so supposedly that like killed the talks completely. And it's like, all right, well, if that's what you guys are wanting, forget it. We're not wanting like a takeover. But wait, there's more. So Bloomberg's people familiar with the matter are claiming that Nissan may already have a new partner in its sights, or at least an idea of who they want to partner with their report claiming Nissan would ideally like to team up with a company from the technology sector and a company based in the U.S. So I don't know if that U.S. Part is, something just as a reaction to, just the way this administration's been going and maybe them wanting to try and protect themselves there with that. I don't know. And it's also not clear if Nissan's already in talks with a company, because this seems oddly specific to say, a technology company in the U.S. I mean, there's thousands of those to probably pick from, but it sounds to me like they're maybe, already have a new suitor, which is why they dropped their old, crush so quickly. They were all excited about this, Honda thing potentially, and then they just dropped that really quickly here. So, I don't know, but that, to me, it just seems kind of interesting that we hear about the talks abruptly ending, and then all of a sudden we're hearing about Nissan's immediate ideas for who they want to partner with instead. So we'll see. We also know Foxconn was really interested in trying to do some type of takeover of Nissan, and the Honda thing was originally branded as like the white knight that was going to save Nissan from a Foxconn takeover, because apparently Nissan, Foxconn was into Nissan, but Nissan wasn't into them, and so, even though Nissan is in these dire straits, they apparently did not want anything to do with Foxconn. Not sure why. But that was kind of the idea there. So obviously Foxconn's based in Taiwan, so maybe again, it's probably not them if they're talking about a US based company, but yeah, I don't know who these Nissan sources could be referring to. We'll have to just wait and see. But whatever Nissan does, it'll have to figure out something this year if the reports at the end of last year were true, with anonymous Nissan executives telling the Financial Times back in November that the company has 12 to 14 months to survive, which would give them until January of 2026. So the clock is ticking. We've got less than a year now for them to make something happen here, if that is in fact true, and they don't get any other financing or anything else to help them out in the meantime. But very interesting to hear that, and we'll just have to wait and see, next week, maybe for some confirmation of the end of the merger talks, and we'll see if, a new suitor emerges, quickly after that. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. And, with Mitsubishi already suggesting that they weren't interested in participating in this big merger talk, it looks like things are pretty rough for Mitsubishi as well, because this week they announced that they're decreasing their net profit forecast for the fiscal year here by 76%. Drop their forecast, their profit is 76% drop is what they're preparing for, revealing that they're now even struggling in places where they previously were strong, like Thailand and Indonesia. And so to try to turn things around, their CEO said, "Our strengths are in plug-in hybrids, the Asia-Pacific market presence, and a product lineup focused on pickup trucks. We are looking to see how these could be utilized and what kind of support we can expect in the North American market and developing auto intelligence, both of which we are not so strong in." Obviously, with the chicken tax, the oldest tariff around, they can't bring any foreign trucks to the U.S., and I doubt that's going to change anytime soon. Obviously, it could go the other way with these tariffs still looming. Potentially, obviously, if you guys have all seen, that's been put on hold here for a month. So I'm not going to touch that until we see, what the consensus is sometime next month. I doubt that they can expect much from the North American market. Apparently, according to their breakdown, we still are, I believe, the second largest market for them that they serve. But, you wouldn't know it based on the products, which are all ancient aside from, the Outlander. And so I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, obviously, if they say they are known for pickup trucks and they can't do that, they're known for plug-in hybrids. Maybe they could do plug-in hybrids of other stuff, but, they just put a wet blanket on the idea last week about, there was a new Mitsubishi Outlander Sport that South Africa got, but they said that wasn't engineered for the U.S. market, so we can't even get that. So it's like there's no new product on the horizon that we know about, at least. There's nothing here that's, going to help them in the North American market. I hope that they have some more stuff, but you would think that being in this bad of a position, they would have teased some kind of new stuff on the horizon, some reason to have hope, and I didn't see any of that here. Maybe I missed it, but, best of luck to them, but, I wouldn't be surprised if Mitsubishi ends up having to pull out of the U.S. market. Again, especially if the market conditions get even more challenging. I mean, it's going to be a struggle for huge companies. And then, especially if there's a target on, Japanese companies with tariffs, because it sounds like there's consideration of tariffs for basically every country in the world. If something like that came against them, it's like, forget it. We could really see some companies start to fall like dominoes this year, even, depending on how things play out. So we'll see, but I think Mitsubishi is one of the weakest links right now. I wouldn't hold my breath for them to stick around. But Volkswagen is also struggling here, but at least they have new product coming and have teased it accordingly. And this week they teased a new EV concept that'll get a production version eventually that'll slot under the $26,000 ID2 that's coming next year, at least for Europe. I don't think we've heard any confirmation about the US yet, sadly. But this new one will reportedly cost under $21,000 for an EV if it actually comes to the US, which it probably won't. Wait for a quote later here. But the vehicle doesn't have a name yet, but ID Everyone was apparently trademarked, and that'll most likely be the concept before they just end up calling it the ID1. Anyway, as far as what we know about it so far, we just know that it's going to be on the MEB small platform, same as the coming ID2, meaning it'll be just front-wheel drive most likely, which is fine, obviously, for something this low cost. And the car was shown to factory employees this week, and at that event, Volkswagen brand CEO said, an affordable, high-quality, and profitable electric Volkswagen from Europe for Europe. That's the Champions League of automotive engineering. Which sounds great to me aside from the for Europe part. Obviously, they need to take care of their home market, but, it just sounds like there's no hope of this coming to the U.S. And, affordable EVs are really, what we need here, I think. And, obviously Chevy's working hard on a new Bolt. Ford apparently has some skunk works in California working on some $25,000 EV. There's American companies working on this. You would think that Volkswagen is, if they have something, why not offer it here as well? Maybe it's just the problem of it having too short of range and, just being too small for Americans, which I totally get, but it'd be nice to still see them try, especially if I'm assuming the Ford and the Chevy aren't going to be huge either, so I feel like there could be a hope for it. But anyway, we'll see what ends up happening. But the full reveal of that concept is actually going to be happening in March, early March, they say, so we don't have too much longer to wait. So stay tuned for that if you're a fan of affordable EVs. And speaking of affordable EVs, we have potentially a new affordable EV that was spied this week by a variety of people, but actually I had some footage that was very kindly sent to me by Tu Chang. Those of you who know him from the live streams every week, he somehow managed to escape the basement to get some some pictures or some videos here of this new thing running around. He thought maybe at first it could be like a new Mach-E or something, and I was trying to figure it out as well. It was really kind of a mystery to me. And then there was some other people that spotted this in Northern California as well, and they seem to be suggesting this is going to be the new Nissan Leaf, which we're not sure about all that because there was just reports not too long ago that a small Nissan electric SUV was going to get pulled from the U.S. market and was going to end up probably just going for Europe and other places, and they're giving up on that car for America. There's still it still could be that case and that they are still not going to sell it here, but they're just, doing testing here, or they already had it here, before those plans got changed, and it's just still sticking around. But so that's, I think what some people are thinking that could be is just the new Leaf. I would think, the taillights would be different in the back if it was, a Mach-E or something. So I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what that is in the comments below. And huge thanks to Tu there for sending those in. And I'm very curious what you guys think that could be. Moving on here, back to some Volkswagen news here for another brief little story. Audi this week has announced they're tossing out their new naming scheme, thankfully, since it was kind of a little bit confusing. Where they originally were going to make the EVs be the even numbered models and the gas-powered stuff being odd numbered. Now they're going back to just normal stuff and the names corresponding to the vehicle size like it used to always be, and much less confusing there. And so unfortunately they made this decision after the switch from A4 going to A5 for its gas powered version, so that is still staying as it is for now, where A5 will replace A4 and we will have A4 e-tron coming in as the only one because it'll be electric there. But as far as everything else falling under the traditional naming scheme, everything else going forward should reflect these changes, meaning the vehicle that was going to be called the A7 that's coming very soon will now just be the A6. And I don't know what that means for the actual A7 because it sounds like A6 will probably go to a liftback just like A5 did, and that then that kind of leaves A7 with nowhere to go. So I'm thinking A7 may actually die off, as will its other performance variants. So we'll have to see. But as far as how they're going to differentiate powertrains, They are still going to, have, again, letter and number. So like A6 will still be a thing. And then it'll be followed by TFSI for gas, TFSIe for plug-in hybrids, TDI, of course, for diesels, and then e-tron for EVs, which, I mean, we're familiar with all of those terms already, really. And so, that makes sense to just differentiate them that way like they always have. Especially with consumers, you don't want to rock the boat too much because people get confused very easily if you're not an enthusiast. You wonder, okay, well, where'd the A6 go? And, everyone gets all confused. So the least amount of change for naming, I think the better, and so I think Audi realized that as well. And so they also said they'll keep using sedan, Avant, and Sportback suffixes as well. And so this new formerly A7, now called the A6, will debut on March 4th. So I'm sure there's someone in Germany that's feverishly quickly making new A6 badges that they didn't think they were going to need. But anyway, so interesting to see that. Ferrari this week had some news on their 2024 financial report that they plan to debut 6 new models here this year. So it'll be a pretty busy year for Ferrari, and one of them will be their first EV, which will debut on October 9th, so a little ways away, but it's interesting that is actually still coming here this year as scheduled. They could have pushed it back, like everyone else is doing, but they're still going to do an EV here in 2025. It's kind of surprising, but there's no hints about the other models that are coming just yet, but I'd say there's a decent chance a new Icona model comes out, since the last one to debut was the Daytona SP3 way back in 2022. So I think it's time for another, high dollar thing there for the collectors. And then for the other 4, a successor of to the SF90 is possible, along with a convertible version of that. That's, we'll see. I don't know I guess SF90 sold pretty well, so they'll probably continue that. But I think the safer bets, though, are, we're due for a hotter, more hardcore, speciality version of the 296. Obviously, I don't know if they're going to call it the Pista or something else. But that coming in both coupe and convertible forms, I think, is fairly likely because 296 has been around since 2022, at least in Europe. So, we can have a few years of the regular ones, and then it's always time for the hotter ones. So I think that is, a safe bet for this year. Another safe bet could be a Purosangue with less than 12 cylinders, whether they just pop in like the 296 powertrain, which is, plug-in hybrid twin turbo V6, still does, 800 some horsepower. It could actually be an upgrade in power compared to the V12. Just give that option to people and help with their, regulations in Europe there and trying to improve that, because they do have to worry about emissions regulations a little bit still, even though they are Ferrari. So, there could be some of that, potentially, or them just, doing something else, maybe put a V8 in it or whatever. I don't know. But, it also makes sense. They see what Urus is doing. That's now plug-in hybrid only. Hopefully, Purosangue keeps the V12 option, but I think offering the plug-in hybrid certainly makes sense for the environment. Bentega's gone to plug-in hybrid, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see about that. But, just glad to hear there's some new Ferraris coming this year. I'm a huge Ferrari fan, so anytime there's a new Ferrari, I'm always excited about that. So anyway, cool to hear that. And for the last news story here, Aston Martin's new CEO, formerly the CEO of Bentley, revealed a lot of different ideas here this week in a media roundtable for how he envisions Aston Martin going and where he wants to take it and how they plan to do this. And there's a bunch of different ideas here. It's a lot of information here that he provided. So if you're an Aston fan, definitely stay tuned for all of this, because it's really promising. I think he's got a great vision here, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out. And so he wants to make it a stronger company. And it's also all good news for enthusiasts, I think, really. And so during this media roundtable, he talked about how in his mind Porsche is a good model for what he wants to do with Aston, and the idea of having multiple variants on a single car and kind of maximizing your investment there makes a lot of sense. And so he wants to do that same kind of thing here. So possibly the best news during this variant discussion was him saying, back to this question of how do we develop each of the nameplates? Which direction do we take them? Sportiness and real purist sports car experience, we need a manual. We have one, but for that, he nods towards a Vantage Park nearby, it needs to be different. But watch this space. So it sounds like the manual currently in the Velour and the Valiant, that both of those, I guess that manual can't be used in these other, products. And the 7-speed from the Vantage, the, I guess, pre-refresh or prior generation, if you're using that term loosely, of the Vantage, did offer a manual briefly until no one bought it and then they got rid of it. That I would assume that manual, it did work with that twin turbo V8, so I would assume that would be the prime candidate, but it sounds like maybe they're doing something even different than that. I'm not sure what they're planning, but I don't care. It's just great news. They want to do a manual and they're, working on that, it sounds like. As far as the other variants, he said that cosmetic ones are one part of the plan. And he revealed that for the lighter touch ones, it will take 1 to 1.5 years. There's a couple of things we've been able to do quickly, but they are more decorative to substantive. But even if stuff is kind of off the shelf, you still have to certify, so it's a year. We're on the case. I really also like the way he's discussing this stuff. It's very casual, very kind of blunt and open. It kind of reminds me of Tim Kuniskis in a way, CEO of Dodge or Ram now. That's I like them kind of being very open about this. And then as far as mechanical differences for other variants of these vehicles, he did mention, this is different suspension tunes, power boosts for stuff like the DB12, Vantage and Vanquish, which already have plenty of power, but always room for more, I suppose. And for the DBX, though, he's even interested in a more luxurious version, since he says the DBX is less relaxing than some competitors. Obviously, again, he came from Bentley. Bentley with the Bentayga, they have the Bentayga Speed, but then they also have the Bentayga Azure, I think, and the Mulliner and all these types of things that are, more luxurious. And I think it works for Bentley probably. Why couldn't it work for Aston, So I think, obviously, Aston's a little more of a sport car company than Bentley is, but I still think that could absolutely work for sure. And it's so great that he, wants to do that. And the ideas even go so far as bringing an existing race car back to the road. And my guess for that is maybe making Vantage GT4 road legal and doing something really hardcore like that. Because we already have like Valkyrie and all these other things that have the, racy versions. So there's already road versions of those. So I don't know what else he could be talking about there, but we'll see. He also said hybrid versions of their front engine cars are coming as well. But there's no plug and play solution, he says, available yet because they use rear mounted transaxles and no one has a hybrid, supplier component just to, work with that kind of a, setup. So, I guess that's going to take some time. I'm not sure if they're going to do that in-house or, try and get a supplier to do something for them. I don't know. But they also are still working on an EV that they've partnered up with Lucid on for components. But he said, we still have the first battery electric vehicle in this decade in the next 5 years. But instead of trying to get as many as we can over the next 5 years, it'll be one. And obviously, that falls in line with buying preferences of exotic car buyers, which don't seem very interested in EVs in general. And also, again, the relaxed nature of the regulations all around the world, it seems, here for the rest of the decade. Why rush it and why, break your back for that if you can instead cash in on as many V12s as you possibly can. And he did say that, the regulations are killing the V12. Eventually, again, we'll see how the next few years pan out, but, he doesn't envision the V12 lasting beyond 2030. That's more than we thought we were getting, though. We thought V12 was going away with the V12 Vantage for the last generation here and DBS, the final edition. And there was a bunch of hoopla about that, and it was like, we weren't going to see V12 even in 2025 here. And now we're seeing it, and it's going to last longer. So we'll see. Again, they keep moving these goalposts, and things keep changing. So maybe 2030 is actually the end of the road for the V12. Maybe it isn't. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, the last piece of the puzzle here he talked about as far as Aston is a bigger options list and more personalization options, which I'm kind of surprised to hear him talk about extra personalization because they already have the Q division, which can pretty much do anything, I thought. But obviously, it'd be, before you make that leap to the Q division, I guess, just having more options like, again, Porsche. makes sense for sure. So, again, that's a great way to drive up profit. That's, the one big way that Porsche does it for sure. And then lastly, about Aston overall, he said, from a business performance point of view, this is a super high potential company, and we need to turn it into a high performance one. And I don't just mean the cars. Things like the options, derivatives, and all this stuff all help drive the top line and the contribution, but we've also got to get a lot leaner and more productive as an organization. And lastly said, my mission is to be the first CEO in 112 years to make it sustainably profitable. And I'm really hoping he pulls it off. Best of luck to him. Aston is one of my favorite car companies, and I love every single one of their products. And so, yeah, I really hope, because Aston, they've had a bumpy road here the past several years, and their future isn't certain, in my opinion. So I really hope that, again, the money comes in, the orders come in, the profits get better and better for them so that they can, be putting up impressive profit numbers like Ferrari and all these others at some point down the road. So we'll see what happens, but best of luck to him. Sounds like they're on a great track. They got a great leader here now, and I really hope that, everything works out for them. And lastly, I want to thank all of you that are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we did have a few new members are able to join, as well as many others are able to rejoin as well, thanks to the very generous membership gifting that was done last week in last week's live stream on the channel here. And so I want to give a huge thank you to all of those very generous gifters, including Grand Admiral Thrawn, Kyle, Wheatman45, and MDKN. Thank you all so much for your generosity. I, of course, always appreciate it. I'm sure all of those members are able to join and rejoin. Also really appreciate it as well. I also want to give a big welcome here to those new members, including Julian Big Grizz, Rishi Patel, Darnell Walton, Mez, Adil Games, JD Foster, and SHWA. So I hope you're all enjoying those membership perks so far, and I'm looking forward to chatting with those of you who can make it to Saturday's live stream here, where those members always do get that priority answering. And if you'd also like to get that priority answering, as well as all the other perks that come with being a member, if you want to support the channel here, there's always join buttons on the video page, on the channel page, and a link in the description. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.